The topic says structures for going global, and in recent times, a lot of things are happening, and we are trying to go from being just Nigerians to being global Nigerians. And in the art space, especially, how do we export our art from home to everyone out there?
Okay. Well, I would say we're already in the business of doing that. We live in a global world that has been um, enhanced by technology. So you see, people are already doing posting online, people are already collaborating. But we can improve in terms of collaboration in the sense that we could do bind up together or communicate, get up with other poets from other cultures, hope to translate our works to other languages. That's taking it higher than what it is now, not just being at the other end of your phone, but actually seeking global travel where you can interact, having exchange programs as well as building up. So those are some of the ways we can, not just being at the other side of the phone, but actually physically traveling to other parts of the world and having that exchange program so we can go further in that direction.
Amazing. Please put your hands together for her. Don't get tired of clapping. All right, so let's pass the mic to Mr. Obiora. So you have 10 books. I saw 10 of them. Amazing books. I haven't read any of them, but I saw the titles and they were all catchy. And we're expecting some in December. Is that correct? All right. So I want to ask you, putting pen to paper and putting money to create these books and print them out is a lot of investment. Can you tell us the structures you've put in place to take this book beyond where you are for you to get to other people around the world? Let's understand your process.
Well, personally, I have a personal attitude to most of these things, and because I am a realist. Okay, and I want to live long, so I don't bother myself about things that I can't solve.
Okay.
And I want us to understand that based on what the Prof taught us this evening, we have an identification problem first. We have a basic challenge of identifying who we are, understanding what we are even selling. The Nigerianness is not yet defined. Nigeria is not defined yet. So if we are talking about doing this collectively, it may still be a big challenge. So individually, a lot of people, like the doctor said, a lot of people are doing their work, doing their own. But for me, I have read a lot of things that tells me that poetry is not a means to getting rich. Yeah. Most poets are not rich.
Hey.
Yeah. Okay, so you need to understand that it's not an access for you to make money. First of all, it's an expression of yourself that gives you joy.
Okay.
Secondly, if you are a praise singer, the king will bless you.
Oh, true. Okay.
But if you are accusing the king of his ways, he will put you in prison.
Okay. So break it down.
Okay, so as a poet, especially in the contemporary state that we are, even the love poems you write will be termed to be hating someone somewhere.
True.
So going by the structure on the global, so my strategy is I write my book, I publish it, I try to sell to as many that would buy. But anytime I receive a new publication, the joy that I have is more than what I spent publishing it. So I am first of all my first customer. That's my strategy. So maybe for now, let's hand the mic.
Put hands together for him. Mr. Ephraim Emmanuel, you are a master of transporting entertainment and art through the use of media, filmmaking and the rest. I want to ask a question and it goes thus. If we are always bothered with exporting our art form to other people, what then and in what medium should we package it? Because sometimes I wonder why we're not worried about them sending us what they have. Why we're always trying to send what we have to them. But since we are on this side of the divide, how then do we package what we have for it to be accepted on the other end of the divide?
Okay, so actually, I will start by answering you directly.
Okay.
Because today I came, I said I will tell stories.
All right.
This is how I'm going to be answering you. So, I like to deal on the globalization side of things. First off, so I'll tell you a short story. 2008, in a classroom like this, Suffolk University, Dakar, international business class, also known as globalization. Okay? Teacher comes in and says, look, everybody define globalization, blah, blah, blah. And everybody gave their own perception, sorry. It's when the world comes together, blah, 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 and all that. So, I raised my hand and I said, as far as I'm concerned, the only time that we have had something close to a perfect globalization is the Tower of Babel. And the woman dismissed me and said, look, no, Emmanuel, we're not talking about the Bible, blah, blah, blah. Me, troublemaker, because we're using like pamphlets. So, I went back to the library and looked for the original book. And the original book, I discovered that there was an entire chapter dedicated to the Tower of Babel.
Yes.
All right.
11.
I was like, what are these people doing? You know. But then I said the Tower of Babel to say this. Babel was about language.
True.
Right? And everybody scattered. So let's just call Babel noise. So in the part of the world where you are, you have your small noise. Those other people have their small noise. This is where we now come to what we call media of communication. How do you get that your small noise from your part of the world heard? That is where media comes in. Okay. Now, I would like to take a different turn when it comes to publishing. When we talk about publishing, I think publishing is anything that has been put in the public space, not just books.
Okay.
It could be movies, it could be still poetry, okay? And in this particular context, I see how we want to package something is looking at it latently, right? Am I communicating?
Yes, you are.
Looking at it latently. So, packaging poetry does not only mean selling books. Now we are making movies, right? You could get part of your poetry into a movie and it's documented.
Can we get a how?
A how?
We need to know a how. How do we get it there?
How do you get it there? It's part of the script. How else do you want to get it there?
How do we get to be part of the script?
How do you get to be part of the script? You write it. Some people contact you, and if they want poetry there, of course it will be there. I don't know how else you want me to explain it.
So we have people here who have amazing works in their drafts.
Okay. Now you're coming.
Okay. So how do they get these drafts to the filmmakers? How do they get it to the music people? How do you bridge the gap between the people?
Bridge the gap.
Yes.
Okay, well, that's a little bit tough, but okay, fair. First of all, we have different people with different materials. Those people also need training, right? They need to build a critical mass, okay? At some point, when they are now in the process of training and knowing, look, you can act, and also, sorry, I forgot to talk about these networks.
Networking.
You don't just, yes, networking. You don't just find somewhere, oh, see my script. You still do the work, basically. You could go around and ask, okay? But it's easier to have a critical mass and to have networks. And, sorry, also, something about globalization that I've not explained is called gradualism. So you don't just wake up in the morning. Port Harcourt poetry, there are people in the past, right? Yeah. We had, like the professor explained. So it has evolved, and it has gotten to this stage. Okay? And another thing, I was talking about is also keeping records. Now it has evolved. We have the young people, new writing, new life. Some can start from anthologies. If it's an anthology, it's edited. At some point, you look, oh, this thing is very good. I need this person's poem in this movie. That's how those things work, right? Sometimes you might go for it yourself, but most times it's better when you're in a network and it can be easily gotten from there. I think that's the best way I can explain it.
Okay, I think that's fine. Please, can we put your hands together for him? Thank you, Madness. Mr. Amunati. My question to you is very simple. In this era, we have young people who are guided by their emotions a lot. They write out of emotion. They do things out of passion. And when there is no passion and no emotion, there is no drive, and there is no drive for even globalization. Now, your poems are amazing, especially the love poems. How do you navigate going beyond just pouring out your emotions to putting out the work there? When there is no emotion, no motivation, what discipline do you instill on yourself to make sure your voice is heard through your work?
Well, I'd like to start by telling a story as well.
All right.
I didn't study literature.
Are there people like that here? Oh, wow, we are many.
I took up writing because someone thought I was useless.
Oh, okay. The story changes here.
And so everything I have done over the years has been to rise to a challenge. And so what did I do? While studying those who wrote before me, who became my teachers through their books, I was very concerned about the quality of the content. No matter how much you write, if the content is not good enough, it's not good enough. If you don't pay attention to how well your works appeal to people who can take it beyond your space, it's not going to go anywhere. I ran into a number of very young people while I was running the Port Harcourt Literary Society. And even before then, very young people who, because of the noise, I'm sorry to say there's a noise of the social media, they begin to arrogate to themselves the sense of arrival. And someone comes to me and says, I have written a book. I want you to write a blog. And I say, I don't write a blog unless I see what I'm writing about.
Blog 4, yeah.
And I look at the works and, being brutally honest, they're not good enough. And I say, hey, why don't you take time to do this, to do this, to do this, to read more, experiment more, be more patient. It took me, I wrote my first poem in 1984. I didn't publish until 2002. In 1984, I went to see Chinua Achebe. He was still at Nsukka in charge of the humanities. And I was still very conflicted. I still am about what I was writing. And I wanted some kind of affirmation. Please, you write. Don't go to people looking for affirmation. Okay. Find it in yourself. But I was young. I was coming from the outside. I've always felt myself as an outsider. And he thought what I was writing was fair enough. He published my first. He actually was my first publisher. Actually, he was publishing a journal called Okike, and that was the first. I don't know where that journal is now. That was the first time I was published. But the first time a publisher published my book was 2002. How many years? Like 18 years after. Why did it take me so long? Because I was concerned about the quality of the work I was doing. When I lost my job in the Daily Times in 1992, I spent the next 2 years, Monday to Friday, at the British Council Library, reading. Not just any books, but books. I was particular about the quality of the book, books written by those who had won the Nobel Prize, reviews of very great literary journals. And I discovered that I wasn't writing as well as I thought I was. And so throughout that period, I began to be more careful about how the words approached me and how I approached the words that I wrote. And the first manuscript I had was ready about that period, but I put it aside and I went back to creating proper content. Why did I do? I'm going to use my own experiences. If I'm going to teach or impart anything here, it's going to be from what I experimented with, what worked for me.
Yeah.
You know, so when that book came out, it won the Anna Poetry Prize. And for me, it was, should I use the word affirmation of what the process
The
I had
work
gone
done
through.
already.
And I'm going to take it away from writing poetry and say this. If you're trying to be global, there are certain important things you must do beyond the content. Being able to sell what you have.
Okay.
Long before us, Langston Hughes, the American poet, was writing a lot of poetry. Blacks weren't very popular as writers in those days. And he was writing and needed someone to help him. So this very popular poet walked into the restaurant where he was working as a waiter. He recognized her. And he went, picked up a serviette and wrote his first poem, one of his poems on the napkin, and just dropped it on her table and went away. That encounter led him to becoming one of the finest, most celebrated American poets of all time. So it's not just about the content, it's about who you run into. And I'll give you an example that is personal. I worked in NDDC, and in 2014, we went to make a presentation at the United Nations about the indigenous people of the Niger Delta. And the hotel where we were put, close to the United Nations building, was where a lot of very celebrated people come to stay, intellectuals. I was told Obama used to stay there as well. And it was a very funny hotel, beyond the 10th floor. Some of us lesser mortals will not go beyond the 10th floor. All right?
Mm-hmm.
But I was on the 9th floor. I got into the elevator and I was going down to I was going to Queens to eat Nigerian food when I ran into this lady. I had just published Through the Window of a Sandcastle. He had just won the Glenn Alusha Prize for Africa book, the Glenn Alusha Africa Book Prize. So it was a book I was quite proud of. You know. So I was holding it in the lift, walking on a river's journey, when this lady walked in. I mean, I came in. She was coming from. Sorry, I'm taking a little time.
No problem.
She was coming down, and I walked in holding the book, and she bent down and she looked at it as I showed the book, and she read it Through the Window of a Sandcastle. I said, "Yeah, it's my book. It's poetry." And that encounter created a lot of things. for me because she said it sounded strange, and I said, would you like me to read you one of the poems? And she said, yeah, why not? And I read her poem. And by the time we got down to the reception, she asked if I could sign it to her. She said, yeah. And I didn't know who she was. I signed it to her. And she says, would you like to have breakfast with me tomorrow?
Okay.
I said, I would like that a lot.
Why not?
Oyibo woman, much older than I, you know, and she says to me, I'm on the 13th floor. When you get to the 10th floor, they will stop you and ask you to call me. I'm in room so. So the following morning I got there, the people were there, they'll be normal police. They stopped me, I called her, and I went to the 12th floor to have breakfast with her, and a lot of things happened. Before the end of that year, I'd been invited by the Center for Black Literature.
You can clap if you want to clap, you know.
To spend 2 weeks at the City University of New York teaching, talking, performing. And that encounter alone, I had a private meeting with the mayor of New York, Bill de Blasio.
Oh, wow.
I had a private meeting with the first black mayor of New York, David Dinkins.
Okay.
I was invited as a guest at a fundraiser for a Democratic candidate who was running for Senate. What did that happen? Why did that happen? Not just because I had a book.
So did
I obviously had a book that she found worthy.
Yeah.
So if you want to go global, first of all, be concerned about what you're writing. Be deliberate about it. Be intentional about it. Don't be in a hurry to publish. Social media devalues us as writers. I'm sorry to say that. Because you write whatever you write and you have 100 likes. 90% of them are your friends. 5% are friends of your friends. Maybe 1% has taken time to deconstruct the words you have put out. At the end of the day, you're not doing yourself a lot of favors. Because if I'm not trying to boastful, God forgive me. But if I thought that book wasn't good enough, I would be ashamed to share it publicly.
Sure.
I would be ashamed to stand before students. There was a 17-year-old girl who had written 2 books already in my class. You know, and there I was trying to also assert my own intelligence and whatever it was I presumed I had. And so, if you want to go global, sorry if I deviated a bit from what you asked, but if we need to be faithful to the subject of this conversation, we need to think first about why, for instance, this auditorium is empty. Because if Burna Boy were here, people will be standing outside. It's about content. If Sabinus comes here, people will be standing outside. It's about content. So we need to be intentional. How can we create content? How can we widen the scope of what we do? Have we tried converting our poetry to music? Have we tried writing scripts about a demented poet so that he can read his poetry on some of the movies we have? These are things we can begin to think about. It's not, nobody's doing you any favors. You must first of all find in you the character, the discipline, and the persistence to do good stuff.
I have a lot of questions to ask, but the director himself says he has his own questions to ask. So please help me make welcome the director of the Port Harcourt Poetry Festival, Mr. Urus Kennedy. Thank you so much, my able seniors in the industry. Let's come down to Port Harcourt, right? This is home, right? how can the Port Harcourt poet become globally recognized? We are not just speaking of Nigeria. We are speaking of Port Harcourt, right? Why should we be specific about Port Harcourt? Because this is home. If we are going to make Nigeria a better place, we'll start from here. If we are going to make poetry an amazing phenomenon in Nigeria, we'll start from here. So how can the Port Harcourt-based poet become globally recognized? And I will say what I want to say with all, without fear. I appreciate the work of the Seaview Poetry Club. Dr. Ekechi, let's start with you. Please, a round of applause. Please, can we pass the mic to her so it will come this way? Seaview Poetry Club has been in existence for 2 decades, right?
Yes.
And what is the output of the Seaview Poetry Club?
Okay.
When you look at the number of poets, Seaview poets have over 100 registered members, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Over time, more than that.
More than that?
Yes.
Okay, so let's start from you. We'll just take maybe less than 2 minutes. From the context of Seaview Poetry Club, how can the Port Harcourt-based poet, the Port Harcourt poet, become globally recognized? If there are structures that are not yet in place, what structures should be put in place to enable that poet? Or if it is the poet's own undoing, what should the poet start doing to become globally recognized? So we'll take it that way from you, and then to Sir Obiora, and then to Mr. Emmanuel, and then Agamunadi. Thank you so much.
Well, we've said some of them. Like, I want to thank Ephraim, the aspect of being intentional and that aspect of gradualism. I think Seaview, we've come a long way. We've been persistent, we've been consistent. And now we use our social media platforms. So we ask ourselves, if I should ask myself, what do you want to sell to the world? Is it about your place or about your person? So the content matters. Now, having global handles and with some of the things I've said, now if you want to go further, you will need to invest, because sometimes if the people can't come to you, you need to go over to them, like identifying other poetry clubs across the globe and connecting. So sometimes you might not find them all at once, them giving you that response all at once in a place. You said something about people coming from UK down here. We need to also identify poetry festivals in other countries, and that way you can collaborate. Because sometimes just over the phone call or people are scared, but you need to make that attempt, and it might involve personal funds, because up till this point, not everybody, not every company, not every institution is still giving that support. So most of it has to be you. I know personally I've invested in a lot in my poetry. I had to publish in journals, and what I focus on basically is medicine. I've been able to use poetry in teaching, even dermatology, because I'm a dermatologist with special interest in geriatric medicine, that's aging skin. So I've been able to use poetry to teach my medicine, even in my classroom. Yes.
Please,
as a matter of fact,
yes,
because of my persistent and consistent, the Nigerian Medical Association had to invite me yesterday. So I did a poem, and the whole thing was just in tandem with what we are doing now. Like I said, it's like, this is a poetry week. They had to call me, they had to give me a letter. I've done some works before with other medical associations, and in fact, I wrote to the NMA, as at that time they didn't recognize me. But because of my persistence, this time they invite me, and they did give me a honorarium. But you could see that it took this long, after like 17 years of practice. But because I was consistent, persistent, I have improved on my work, I've invested. I've been to London where I perform poetry. That's on my own. Nobody sponsored me. And because they see it, that this person is serious and passionate, they have the option but to seek for the best.
All right, thank you so much. Please. Yeah, so the Port Harcourt poet must invest in themselves and look out for international opportunities on their own and take advantage of those international platforms. Thank you so much. Mr. Obiora. How can the Port Harcourt-based poet, the Port Harcourt poet, become globally recognized? Just 2 minutes or less.
You know, the question you ask can be given answers easily, but the answer you want or the answers I'm going to give you, are they real answers? Because look, poetry can be entertaining, but poetry mostly is academic because it's something that deals with the soul, not emotions, even though emotions drive it. Now, like Mr. Nadi said, look at this place. Nadi said, look at this place. Why are people not here? Why? Because when people are terribly hungry, the mind goes to sleep. That's where violence takes over. If it's a party campaign now, all the young people in Port Harcourt will be here. Now, to your question, Madam says, it's you working on your brand. What do you want? Your individual strategy, what you want. The first time one madam in America bought my book from Amazon and she read it, and she was like, Nigerians, wonderful poets. And she told her friend and she bought. Then that week, when I went to my account, you know, and honestly, the money came in through GT, was 100 and something thousand. And I imagined if I could do more promotion online for many people across the world to buy, I probably will be getting a lot of money all the time. So at the end of the day too, like he said too, if you have a good work, promotion, marketing, building groups like these festivals together. And I will not be ashamed to say this, and I mean, I will be honest to say this, until this nation, this country wakes up and we're able to have an identity where the state will be able to create systems and structures that will enable such pursuits that we are engaged in. I used to be a cabin crew in Nigeria Airways. When we put newspapers on board, especially at 470 in the morning, our politicians and our leaders don't read. If you travel on your train in US or London, you see everybody is reading something, but our people don't read. So you can imagine poetry. One of our Nigerian organ in Lagos, when I was working in Lagos, I took my first book, Roses and Thorns, to him. What the man said to me is, the time you are paid, you are using it to write. Then I went to the main boss, a Frenchman, Jean-Michel Guy. What he said is, what? So after work, you still find time to write. These are two words. The white man said to me, so after work, you still find time to write. He and his wife traveled from Port Harcourt to come to the book presentation in Lagos. My Nigerian Oga didn't come. So this for me is from time I know. If you're lucky to have your good work and have destiny to meet you like it happened for Amunadi, then it's a launch for you.
All right, thank you so much, sir. So to be intentional about promoting our works as much as we can. Thank you. Simon or Ephraim?
This question, okay. Anyway.
Yeah, 2 minutes.
I will dwell on the aspects of networks because you have to understand how the global world works. You know, it works on networks. And not just networks. Now, we are in Port Harcourt. There are different platforms. Platforms, very important. Part of it is also the fact that we should also create our platforms. Port Harcourt Poetry Festival is a platform. CV Poetry Club is a platform. PHLS is a platform. You know, all these things. So, networking and collaboration on these platforms, across these platforms, are very important. Today, I'll just give an example, not really Port Harcourt, and I'll come back to Port Harcourt. On my way and studying for all this, I was listening to a Cuban group, that Buena Vista Social Club. I know Lyrical Pontiff likes them a lot. But they are local in Cuba. I don't even think some of them are still alive. They are probably very old men that play at a cafe. But some tourists will come and see that, listen to that music and like it. There are people who move from Cuba to Miami, pushing that music. The music is evolved. It is going to America. From there, it's going across the world. So networks is very important in the sense that, oh, okay, Oruz, you are going to South Africa to attend, what's the one they do in South Africa? Why don't you take some of our books to go there? Or some of our videos. So already, when you are there, apart from networking on your own individual level, you're an ambassador for Port Harcourt. That is what networking does. Have you listened to this guy? Yeah, Abi? So, you know, what used to happen, I'm using the reverse case now. When we were younger, and Nigerian music, in quotes, this particular kind of music was not yet a thing. We used to get music from the United States. Now they want to come and, how do you call it now? Collaborate with us. Then what used to happen? Oh, some of your friends that travel abroad, when they come back, have you listened to this? Have you listened to that? They bring CDs back, you know, and those CDs spread across our market. So that's the same way we should also push our products there. Now, coming to Port Harcourt specifically, I would, for Seaview, I thought about so many projects and Port Harcourt projects, me personally. But those projects have to do with videos and documentaries. You can push them because we have been doing a lot. But how do we tell those stories? We could tell those stories and put them on international film festivals. That way, they are going. It's all about Port Harcourt. We are moving. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So we should network more. All right.
You want me to be very honest with you?
As honest as, how can the Port Harcourt poet become globally recognized?
Nobody goes global unless it's sponsored. A lot of people ask me how come PHLS isn't functioning? No funding. I was spending averagely 250,000 every month to run it. I worked in an organization that wouldn't fund it. I had friends who wouldn't fund it. The only people who funded it were The Promise at the beginning and then Kilimanjaro. After the first year, they stopped. The next 2 years, I ran it alone. You were part of it, so you know I'm speaking the truth. We were in a place where that had been built by Shell. After COVID, they wouldn't come back. Without funding, I mean, look at what you and I experienced in the process of your putting this together. Since I dropped those letters, nobody has spoken to me. I don't work attire. And I told you, right?
Yes.
But then, let us also look at someone like Sabinus, who will be Port Harcourt boy. He's global. There's a lot going on with TikTok and YouTube and all that. It comes back to what kind of content are we creating. I'm very sorry to say this, right? We need to do a lot more work. I listened to the young girl from Ogoni, brilliant girl. Who's going to fund her? Who's going to sponsor her? She's doing something different. If she waka, you get the kind waka where she go waka herself. The guys where you go meet to sponsor her, go they look for other things. True or false? So, and it's not something that's peculiar to Port Harcourt, it's global. If you are not funded, you're not going anywhere.
All right, sir. Thank you so much. Please, a round of applause for August.
Please, I want this, if you don't mind, let it be on record. You know, I keep saying the country, politics. Imagine our country was safe. Imagine we have tourists coming to Nigeria. He's going back to his country. He takes 2, 3 of our books home, takes it in his community and to the library, and they see it. The next day they go to the internet to look for you, and the whole village buys your book. That's selling Port Harcourt or Nigeria. So let us pray.
The American doesn't have to come here because social media is everywhere. We can attract them. But then when you talk about Americans, why would the American fund us? Why? Why can't we find people here? LNG is doing a great job. Thank God for them. Because if they didn't fund you, we not go sit down here. But LNG weren't the only people you went to see.
Yes.
Where are the others? See, let us stop looking out there. If we want to take Port Harcourt everywhere, let us take Port Harcourt everywhere, being Port Harcourt people.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So please, are we clapping? Are we jamming those hands? So thank you so much, our honorable panelists. It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.